Do you listen to this show every week? Then help ensure it's here to stay. You can do that by including Voice of San Diego in your estate plan. Call Iris Magid for more details at 619-550-5664. Thank you for supporting the future of investigative journalism in San Diego.
Thanks for joining us on the Voice of San Diego podcast in partnership with News Radio 600 Kogo. I am Scott Lewis, editor-in-chief at Voice. I'm joined, as always, by associate editor and not fisherman Andrew Keatts. Hello.
Hi.
Sara Libby, our managing editor, Oregon River enthusiast, and reality television authority. Sara Libby.
That's a great intro. Thank you.
Do you think you could battle Bill Walton in Oregon River trivia?
I do. I would like the opportunity to try.
I'm going to try it. We're going to set this up. That's my new plan. Coming up on the show today, there are a lot of fewer women on company boards in San Diego and California than you might expect, but a deadline is coming that should change that reality, or in theory would. SANDAG had a big meeting recently. We've got some insight on what happened there and what didn't happen, more particularly. All of that is coming up. I have to go to an event tonight, you guys.
Okay.
I'm moderating a panel for the Partnership on the Advancement of New Americans.
PANA.
And it's about, and this gave me shudders when I was invited, redistricting.
Oh.
So
That's back, huh?
Were either of you here in 2010?
No.
Okay.
I was new. I knew only of it happening. I was not covering it.
It was a nightmare.
Yes.
It was a nightmare. Midori Wong, who ran the redistricting commission as the paid executive of it, she came in under budget, got it all done, but it was grueling. I think it ruined public service for her. I think she was out after that. So at first it was just this intense battle, fights all the time, accusations, just dreadful public affairs, the worst of public affairs. And then all of a sudden it got resolved. The Republicans and Democrats were just like, oh, okay, we're done.
Yeah, there comes a time during those things where everyone sort of just concedes that they were working the ref. It's like, yeah, well, we were arguing in bad faith. So now we've gotten enough of what we were driving at. This was a bargaining exercise, not a real disagreement, and we can move on now.
So PANA is getting ready and obviously working for representation. So I wonder if now that the Democrats are in charge and will have significant influence, they already have you could almost say pretty good chances to win 7, if not 8 of the city council seats of the 9.
Yeah.
And so I think that we might start to see, just like we are in the broader politics, some bigger fights among Democrats, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes.
And that was a defining characteristic before, too, when, various groups wanted to make sure they were represented on the city council. And that could get more fierce this time. So doing a little workshop on how that works. I moderate for all kinds of different groups out there. So I'll report back if anything interesting comes out. Before we get into all of the other things, though, I want to just say we have a little campaign going on at Voice. If you follow the Morning Report, that's our daily newsletter, you may have noticed we're asking people to share it with friends. We think more people would like to see what we're making here at Voice and what we find is interesting around the marketplace of ideas in San Diego. So same thing here for the podcast. If you like the show, please share it with your friends. Let them know how amazing I am and how okay Andy is and how amazing Sarah is. We really believe more people want to hear about San Diego news. I'm serious. We've worked really hard on this stuff. We're friends. We're trying to make sure people understand how San Diego works and things that we investigate and find out. So anything you can do to share helps. Just send your friends to voiceofsandiego.org/pod. Is that new? Pod? Thank you. Or however you like sharing podcasts. Thank you very much. Okay, Wednesday, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez's daughter, Tiara Gonzalez, tweeted a joke that was just a little too real right now. She said, quote, "I hope whomever marries me is okay marrying into a blood feud against Rob Schneider." So this is back.
It's back.
Did it ever leave?
It escalated quickly. But yeah. Whew.
All right, quick chronology. Lorena Gonzalez has been among the several Sacramento legislators who support more mandatory or sort of more mandates from the government to get vaccinated or to have your kids vaccinated, right?
Well, it's sort of like there's one mandate, and then we're just going to keep shoring it up,
right?
As you find ways around
she's
it.
Weeding out all the exemptions from the mandate.
Right. So before it said you have to have your kids vaccinated to go to school, but you could have a personal belief exemption. Then they got rid of the personal belief exemption. That's caused a bunch of furor. But now, as we've discovered with some of our reporting, there was a medical exemption that was kind of being, looks like maybe exploited too much, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so now they're trying to close that and make it so that, what's the last status of the bill now? That it would make it so that a board could overrule a doctor?
No, yes. So originally they were going to move the power to dole out the medical vaccines from doctors to this board. And now it just seems like a board will sort of have oversight and will conduct audits of, the exemptions that are handed out and kind of review the ones that have been handed out so far. So it's definitely been scaled back a little. And the thinking was that would appeal to Gavin Newsom, who sort of expressed some hesitations about the bill.
Yeah, kind of surprising, right? He came out and was a little more sympathetic to the crowd that's worried about vaccinations. So the government is basically saying, we understand that there are exemptions from these that might be legitimate. We're not going to take those away from a doctor, your doctor necessarily to do, but we will review those.
Yes.
Okay, so that bill is going forward. It ended up at the Appropriations Committee where Lorena Gonzalez was going to move it to the suspense file. I'm never going to understand that, so don't
just
try.
A procedural
Okay.
thing.
So she then opened it up for public comment and had a little bit of a quarrel with some of the people who wanted to make public comments over, certain minutes.
Yes, to be clear, any time vaccines are whispered inside the halls of the Capitol, a swarm of opponents materializes to express their opinions about it.
Right, and she said something like, "I don't play, like we're not going to mess around with the rules and stuff like that." Anyway, that video goes viral among this community, and they just start torching her social media feeds. Like she'd put a picture of her family, and they just lit it. So she actually put up a picture once that just said, "This is for you guys to comment on." And they had like 1,400 comments, like just torching her. And the really vicious stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
And so then this was all going along. And then Rob Schneider, he of SNL fame, Deuce Bigalow, Gigolo.
Yes.
What else is he famous for? Oh, what's that one with Sylvester Stallone? Judge Dredd? Was that him?
Oh, yeah, he was in Judge Dredd, yeah.
It's probably his best. Judge Dredd was classic.
It's a good film. It's aged very well.
So Rob Schneider, who had a feud with Lorena Gonzalez Schneider, a feud with her several years ago that was highlighted on HBO's Last Week Tonight.
You can't make people do procedure that they don't want. The parents have to be the ones who make the decisions for what's best for our kids. It can't be the government saying that. It's against the Nuremberg laws.
Yes. That is Rob Schneider performing an impromptu rendition of his famous character, the annoying guy who is wrong. Because despite his misunderstanding of, among other things, what the Nuremberg laws are and what constitutes acceptable headwear for a grown man, Schneider has spoken out against mandatory vaccines for years, even once calling this California State Assemblywoman to debate the issue, prompting her to post on Facebook, "Let's be honest, that is 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back," arguing that vaccines don't cause autism with Deuce Bigalow male gigolo. And yeah, sure, it's funny.
So this time, Nathan Fletcher, who wasn't in the picture before, is now in. He challenged Schneider to another debate on NBC. NBC San Diego agreed to host this. We'll see if Deuce Bigalow can do it. Now, though, where does this bill go?
So it's back before the Appropriations Committee at the end of the month, which, again, is chaired by Lorena Gonzalez. But in looking into this, I discovered something that might lift Rob Schneider's spirits, which is that the committee is vice-chaired by a Republican whose name happens to be Bigelow.
Put symbols there, all right?
Speaking of which, what is a band without symbols?
In San Diego, there are at least 20 public companies with 0 women on their boards. Okay, you looked into this?
Yes.
What's going on?
So the legislature passed a law. It was co-written by Tony Atkins last year, requiring publicly traded companies that are based in California to have at least one woman on their board. So this is a rule that some countries have in Europe, but it was the first one in the United States. It was actually kind of interesting because when he signed the law, Jerry Brown admitted that he thought it was unconstitutional, which is interesting. He signed it anyway. It was right in the midst of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, and so he said he was sort of making a point about how...
Is that what we'd call like saying the out loud part or the quiet part out loud?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. It's just saying something. It's being vulnerable.
Well, it would be. It's odd. It makes me think he's almost inviting a legal challenge.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's almost certain that it will eventually be challenged. But for now, it's on the books, and the deadline is the end of the year to have one woman on your board. So in 2 more years, another deadline kicks in.
At least one woman.
At least one woman right now. And then 2 years later, another deadline kicks in. And if you have a board of 5 or more people, you have to have more than one woman on your board.
Now, did any of these companies talk to you?
It may shock you to learn that they did not. No one wanted to talk about how they didn't have a woman on their board. But I did get a few interesting statements sent over in lieu of an interview. One was from somebody who said, well, actually, we're going to go ahead and move to the East Coast so we don't have to have a woman on our board. Now, this person swore up and down that it was because their parent company is in Germany and it was just to be closer to them.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say I believe that for the simple reason that it's so much easier to put a woman on the board than to relocate your company across the country.
I have no reason not to believe it. It was just kind of funny.
Well, you would think they might actually just say, we're still going to try for diversity.
Of course.
Right.
Even though it doesn't look like we have to conform to this law.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That is definitely true.
And then another person...
Because again, this is not an onerous regulation. This is an easy thing to do.
You sure would think. I, for example, am available.
Yeah.
I'm around.
Well, a lot of these corporate boards, especially public companies, like that's a significant paid deal too. You get shares of the company, you get per diems, all that sort of thing.
But like, there's a lot of women out there.
No, there's also a lot of women who exist.
There's so many, like all over the place. I see them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot.
You run into them
every day. I
has
run into them so much, and. In this state, other states, everywhere. There's like
you should try to avoid them so you don't run into them.
They avoid me.
Okay. Hey.
So another company told me, hey, actually, we just merged with Tesla, so we're not public anymore. Therefore, they too don't have to think about putting a woman on their board. So they were, eager to tell me that. I don't know, but it's a private company, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, thanks for following up on that.
It would be newsworthy to me if Tesla didn't. Wouldn't necessarily be surprising, but it would be newsworthy.
I will say, in painstakingly looking up every single corporation in San Diego and seeing who was on their board, 2 insights come up. One is that there are a lot of men out there named Kim or Francis.
Really?
Or Lauren. Who turns out are not women.
Yeah. Oh. Made it difficult.
Yes, it made it difficult to look up each individual person to make sure every Kim was a woman or a man.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a hoop I didn't expect to jump through. Also, shout out to Jack in the Box, which has a large share of women on their board.
Oh. Fascinating.
Any others?
I mean, some boards are really big. So, like Biocom, for example, has like 40 people on their board. So they have 8 women, which is sort of a lot of women, but it's not a big share relative to how big their board is.
Transit versus highways has been a source of tension at the San Diego Association of Governments. We've been watching it all summer, this sort of thing build. You wondered if it was going to really maybe rock the early tenure of Hassan Akrada, the executive director. So conservatives on the board of directors of San Diego Association of Governments wanted to stop Akrada's 5 big moves plan. That's what it's called, right? 5 big moves? 5 big move 5 ways? Something 5.
That is a term that they use.
Okay.
Without question.
Big 5 is also a sporting goods store. Is that right?
Very affordable.
That's also true.
Great.
Yes.
They tried to do that. They set
Big
up
Five is also the name of a loose conglomeration of college basketball teams in the Philadelphia area that are part of different conferences but compete against each other.
Do they want to come to San Diego?
No, they have nothing to do with this.
Do they have moves?
Yes. Basketball.
Okay. So these conservatives tried to derail Akrada's 5 big moves at a meeting last week. They wanted this meeting, set it up or got it done.
Yeah.
And
they forced the meeting. Yeah.
You went to the meeting.
Yeah.
And
it's
then
a long one.
The meeting,
marathon.
Meeting happened, but nothing happened really at the meeting, right?
I think that's a fair way to characterize that. Is how I've characterized
it. So why?
Yes.
Why did so the facts are that Mayor Kevin Faulconer went in and said, "Hey, let's just keep doing. Let's support what he's doing. We still have to wait to see how it's going to go." And hey, okay, we will work on congestion in the North and East counties.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed on the show that one of the issues that Hassan Akrada has been dealing with at SANDAG, for both to his benefit and to his detriment. I think you had this conversation with Catherine Blakespear. Basically, that there has been a vagueness about what he's proposing that has allowed people to take from it whatever they want, whether that's positive or negative. And I think that is what happened last week as well, which is, so Mayor Faulconer made this motion and said, let's continue down this path. Let's allow staff to continue working on the vision that they've sketched out. But then he made a motion that said, and we'll continue to prioritize investment in the corridors that were some of these East County and North County corridors that the elected leaders from those areas thought that they were getting taken from them.
Okay, so strip that off real quick.
But the thing is, like, if you had listened to any of the follow-up interviews with Hassan Akrada, he had said that they were still going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
You know, there was this disagreement where everybody was constantly talking past each other. And, you know, Jim Desmond and Kristen Gaspar were saying, you're killing these projects that we've been promised. And he was saying, maybe I'm going to continue investing in them, but maybe the specific projects that had been proposed don't make sense anymore. But we're still going to invest in those. He never said, it's my plan to abandon transportation in North County or even to abandon freeways in North County. And so now this motion that Gaspar and Jim Desmond greeted as something of a compromise, to my reading, is perfectly consistent with what Akrada had already said.
Which goes back to that point of, like, it's so vague right now, you can read into it what you want.
Whatever
However,
you want.
My question is, what happened? Is that conservative North County, East County push losing steam?
I think so, to some extent.
Now, why?
Well, one reason potentially is that this still is so far away, for the same reason, because this is still so early, because things are still so vague. I mean, nothing is changing in the short term, no matter what, anyway.
They had nothing to really trigger off of except for that congestion tax, which has been just barely mentioned, like a dynamic pricing structure for different highway lanes and stuff like that. That's been barely mentioned as an option.
Yeah.
That was the one thing they wanted to hang onto maybe as like a real thing that they could outrage people with.
Yeah, and I think they're still trying to with that. Right
yeah,
now.
she tried to pass a motion to definitely oppose that, and they weren't willing to yet.
Right.
And so, but that's what they need. They need something red meat out there to cling on to. Otherwise, it's going to keep losing steam for a while, right?
I think that's right. Yeah. And so now there was one piece of news, I guess, if you're following this very closely, which is, so yes, there was this discussion when the whole concept was first pushed out there that mentioned congestion pricing or dynamic pricing. And because it was vague enough for everyone to glean from it whatever they wished, I think there were some transit advocates or environmentalists or urbanists who thought that maybe that might mean something like London's congestion pricing regime, where you actually had to pay money to enter the city center, which the city of New York is pursuing as well. I think some people did, in fact, think maybe that's what he was talking about. And Kristen Gaspar questioned him about it, and he said specifically, what they did in London and what they're considering doing in New York is not what we are considering doing here. But when she pushed him and said, well, I want you to take all of that off the table, and he said, I'm not willing to take anything off the table. We need to have all of our tools available to potentially meet whatever mandates come before us in the future, and it's just too early for you to start laying out these sort of lines in the sand. And so he was unwilling to say, I definitely won't do that. But he also said, so we're clear, we're not doing that. So
I'm sure that people will understand that nuance.
Yeah, I mean, and then a week later, she holds a press conference saying, let's oppose this, I think she called it track and tax scheme.
That's better than Feuds.
Yeah, so they're still pursuing it, and that seems to me to actually be a more reasonable difference of opinion, which is just to say, like, here's a very specific thing that is being discussed that I'm not in favor of, than what was happening before, which was, I think, was kind of taking what you want out of a very vague pot and then building a whole political argument around it.
Right. Thanks for listening to the Voice of San Diego podcast. Be sure to keep an eye on the podcast feed. Coming soon, we'll have a bonus episode with immigration reporter Maya Sri Krishnan. She's been in Honduras, and she went to find out why more people from that country are coming to the U.S. and what kind of networks they pulled on to get here. That will be coming soon. I'm Scott Lewis, editor-in-chief. Andrew Keatts is assistant editor. Sara Libby is managing editor. And this show was produced by Nate John, Adriana Heldies, and Megan Wood. We will talk to you next week. Do we think we had a satisfactory, adequate show?
I think it was adequate.
It was adequate, yeah.
So I should feel good then.